Today on our 2017 Lincoln MKX, we're going to be taking a look at showing you how to install the Roadmaster Diode 7-wire to 6-wire Flexo-Coil wiring kit, part number RM-15267. So here's what our wiring looks like when it's fully installed, and it's going to allow us to accept our RV lights and activate our Lincoln's lights in conjunction with that. So when we're flat towing our Lincoln down the road, people will know whether we're slowing down, changing lanes, or anything, because our lights will activate on the back at the same time that they're activating on our RV. Now our kit is going to come with a 6-way round plug at the front of your vehicle, and it's going to come with an umbilical cord to connect from your RV with the 7-way end, and then a 6-way round end for the vehicle. Now our wiring kit is going to have some diodes, and they are going to stay right behind our taillights, and we are going to have to splice into our wires. Now the nice thing about our diodes is it's going to prevent any kind of feedback that we may have on the RV side from damaging the electrical components in our car. Now that we've gone over some of the features and we've seen what it looks like, let's show you how we got it installed. So I took my loom and I went ahead and put it on the end of my 4-pole wire. I left a big wad of it up here. We're going to leave that there for now, and we're going to start routing the other end towards the front. So I'm going to come behind the headlight, down towards the radiator. Now I'm just going to zip tie this temporarily for now, just so I don't have to worry about the wire falling down. Now the wiring is going to be a lot easier to route if the fascia is not on the car. So I would suggest doing your wiring whenever you do your base plate. Now that we have our fascia back on, we can go ahead and start running our wire towards the back of the vehicle. And to help me get it there, I'm going to take a piece of Airline tube, and I'm actually going to run it down to the bottom of the engine so I can catch up with it down at the bottom. That way I make sure that my wire is going where I want it to go. So I'm just going to start feeding this down until it reaches the bottom. Then I can attach the other end to my wire so I can pull it through. I'm just going to take a little bit of electrical tape and tape my wire to my Airline tube. I don't have to worry about it dropping and losing the wire when I start pulling. So here's where my Airline tube came out. I'm just going to start pulling it down until my wire comes down to the bottom. I'm going to pull all the excess wire down, make sure it doesn't get hung up top. And once we have all of our wire down, we're going to need to route this all the way back to our tail lights. And everybody's going to do it a little bit differently, but I just want to recommend that you stay away from any heat sources like the exhaust or any moving parts that will damage the wire. So I routed my wire, zip tying it along the way, routed it underneath this cover. Then I came out, went around the fuel tank, over the filler neck, and I went over the back area in the back axle here. Then I actually went underneath my heat shield so I don't have to worry too much about my muffler. Then I have it to drop down right here. Now we're going to need to split each one of these wires, and then the easiest way to do it is to split them all the way back up to the bumper. That way we have 4 separate wires. Now the easiest way to do this is if you take a pair of cutters and very carefully cut in between each wire, being careful trying not to cut it. And then once we have a little bit of room in between the wires, we can start pulling them apart. And you're going to want to split each one of these wires. With the wires ran to the back, we're going to gain access to our taillights. So we can go ahead and open up our rear hatch. And the way our taillights are going to be attached is right behind this cover, we're going to have a fastener that we're going to have to remove. So I'm going to take a flat blade screwdriver and pop that cover off. Then we can grab a T25 Torx bit and we can remove that bolt. Now with that removed, you're going to want to kind of wiggle the tail light back and forth, and once it loosens up, you're going to want to pull straight back. Now we can go ahead and disconnect our electrical connector. There's going to be a small tab towards the back. If we push on it and pull and release it, and to make it a little bit easier to test, I'm going to remove the clip here on the connector, so we can have a little bit more room to work with. Now that we have this one exposed and open, we're going to go and repeat that on the passenger side as well. With both the taillights out, we're going to need to test our wires to figure out which wire is for which circuit. So I went in and turned my headlights on so we can figure out which wire goes to our taillight circuit. So I'm going to take my test probe and I'm going to probe each one of these prongs and figure out the corresponding wire that goes to my taillight signal. So it's going to be this bottom left one right here, which is going to correspond with the purple and teal wire. Now we're going to need to remember that or write that down. Now on the passenger side, we're going to be testing for the same thing. It looks like it's going to be this bottom left one here, which is going to correspond with the white wire with the orange stripe. And again, we're going to need to remember or write that down. Now the next circuit we're going to test for is going to be for our brake light circuit. So I went in and turned the headlights off, and I have an assistant holding the brake down for me, making sure that's the only lights that are going to come on. So we can go ahead and start testing our wires. And it looks like it's going to be this bottom pin right here, and that's going to correspond with the white and teal wire. So again, we're going to need to remember or write that down. And we'll test for the same thing on the passenger side too. So it's going to be the bottom right, which is going to correspond with the gray and purple wire. So our brake light signal was this white and teal wire. So we can go ahead and check that wire. And we can see we are getting our turn signal circuit right here. And we'll go ahead and double check the right side as well. So on the passenger side, if we remember, our brake signal is the purple and gray wire. And if we check that pin, we can see it's also activating our right turn signal. So we're going to start on our driver's side. And again, I'm going to take a piece of Airline tube. I'm going to go down between the body and the bumper. And I'm going to feed my Airline tube down so I can grab the wires and start pulling them up. So my Airline tube here. Now we're going to leave our green wire down at the bottom for now, but we're going to grab the yellow, brown, and white wires and grab the end of them and grab our Airline tube and put a couple of them inside the Airline tube. Then take a piece of electrical tape and secure it. And start pulling our wires up. And when you pull these up, you want to make sure you get all the wire pulled up and there isn't any bundle or wad that's getting stuck underneath. So we're going to go ahead and start with our yellow wire, which is going to be for our turn signal and our brake. And if we remember on the driver's side, that's going to be the teal and white wire. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this wire in half and strip back both ends. I'm actually going to fold these in half. That way there's a little bit more wire once we get ready to make our connections. You're going to want to grab one of your diodes. And we're going to take the connectors off. We can take one of the connectors, put it on the connector end of our taillight circuit, crimp it into place, and put another connector on the other end of that wire. We're going to take our diode, and the side that's going out is going to go towards our plug that plugs into our taillight, and the other end of the wire is going to go into the inside, doesn't matter which side. And then we're going to take our yellow wire, and we're going to estimate about how much wire we need, so that'll be plenty right here. And we can strip back the end of that wire. Now we're going to take our other connector and crimp it into place. Then we can plug it into the other side of the in on the diode. So now we're going to be working with our brown wire, which is going to be our taillight signal. So on the driver's side, it's going to be the purple and teal wire. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to cut it in half and strip back both ends. Again, I'm going to fold my wire, have a little bit more to grab onto with the connectors. Now this time we're going to grab the diode with the 2 blue connectors and the 1 yellow connector. Now we're going to start off with the 2 blue connectors, and one of each is going to go on each end of the wire that we just stripped. With those connections made, we can go ahead and plug in the in and out, and again the out is going to go towards the plug on our taillight. I'm going to go ahead and pull off the yellow terminal, set it aside. Now we're going to take our brown wire. We're going to need to estimate about how much we need again. So this should be about plenty. We're going to cut this wire, but this time We're going to hold on to the excess and we're going to strip back both ends. The end on the excess and the end that we routed up. And we're going to twist both of these together and combine them to one wire, and we can crimp on the large yellow terminal. And finally we can plug it in. Now that excess wire, our brown wire, this is actually going to go over to the passenger side, so we're going to have to route that back down. So I'm going to drop my Airline tube back down, and then on the other end I'm going to attach my brown wire. Before we move back down, we'll go ahead and finish up here with our white wire. Our white wire is going to be for our ground. We're going to need to connect it to some sheet metal, and they do provide us with a self-tapping screw. So I'm going to estimate about how much I need, cut it, and I'm going to strip back the end of it. Now on the end, I'm going to be crimping on a ring terminal that they provide in our kit. I'm going to take the provided self-tapping screw. I'm going to screw it right into the sheet metal right here. I'll be using a 5/16 nut driver to put it in place. Now we are going to have our brown wire run across over to the passenger side. Now obviously we see that we don't have enough wire, but you can pick up some wire on our website by the foot using part number 16-1-1. So we'll go ahead and strip back the end of our brown wire, as well as the extra wire that we got. I just happen to have a little bit of green wire laying around. Now in our kit they do provide us with the butt connector to connect the wires so you can put your extension in, but I'm going to be replacing that connector with a heat shrink butt connector, since it is going to be on the outside of the vehicle and help provide a little bit more protection. Now if you need some of these, you can pick these up on our website. And crimp our wires into place. I'm going to be using a heat gun to shrink down my connector. I just do want to mention that you want to be extra careful not to burn the wire or the connector itself if you are using an open flame, such as a torch or a lighter. Now we're going to use the same method to get the other two wires back up to our passenger side. So I'm going to take my Airline tube and go ahead and start passing it down. So I'm going to go ahead and attach my two wires to my Airline tube, then I can go back up top and start pulling them through. Now again, you want to make sure you pull all the excess wire up, and it never hurts to look underneath and make sure it didn't get knotted up and tangled. We can start with the green wire, not the extension, but the green wire coming off of our 4-pole wiring, and that's going to be for our right turn and brake signal. So if we remember, that's going to be the purple and gray wire. So we can go ahead and cut that wire in half and strip back both ends. Again, the out is going to go towards the taillight socket. And it doesn't matter which end we put it in. Estimate about how much wire we need. Cut our green wire and strip it back. Crimp the terminal in place. Plug it into the end. Now finally, for our extension, if we remember, this wire was originally brown, and that's going to be for our taillight circuit. Now the taillight circuit is going to be that orange and white wire, so we can go ahead and repeat that same process. With all the connections made back here, we're going to tuck our diodes down as far as we can. We're going to put our connector back into the clips, holding it. That way we can get our taillight back in place. We're going to go ahead and do that on the other side as well. So we can plug our taillight back in. We can finally reinsert our taillight. Once we have the taillight in, we can replace the screw holding it in. And finally, we can put the cover back in place. We can go ahead and do that on the driver's side as well. Now you want to make sure you tidy up your wires that are underneath. You don't want them hanging down. You especially don't want them touching the muffler or anything really hot. Now I put some wire loom around the wires and then secured it to the top of my vehicle and the frame on the bottom right here with a wire loom clamp. Now if you need some wire loom, you can pick some up by the foot using part number 459075-1. Now if you need some wire loom clamps like this, you can pick one up on our website using part number A0500. So we're going to have to wire up our connector on the front here. So we're going to have to split those wires again. So again, just take your pair of cutters, be extremely careful, and try your best to go in between the wires and not cut the wire itself. Now this time we don't need to strip it back and pull them apart too far, but just enough so we have some working room. Now we haven't pulled back, we're going to strip back the end of each one of these wires. So before we start, I'm going to take my dust cover, I'm going to slide it over my wires, I'm going to push it back fairly far, that way it's out of the way. Now we can grab our plug and we can start to wire up our plug. So we can go ahead and start with our white wire, that's going to be our ground. So we're going to find the terminal that says GD. We can loosen them up and take our white wire, insert it into the terminal, and then tighten up the set screw. Now if we come to the top, it's going to say TM. That's going to be for trailer marker, which is going to be our brown wire, because that's going to be for our tail lights. So we're going to do the same thing. Loosen up the set screw, put our wire in, and tighten it up. Now if we come to the bottom, it's going to say LT. That's going to be for our left turn. And that's going to be that yellow wire. And finally, right next to that one, we're going to have one that says RT. That's going to be for our right turn, and that's going to be our green wire. Now before I put my dust cover on and secure everything, I'm going to take a little bit of dielectric grease. I'm just going to put it inside the connection points in here. I'm going to take my dust cover, slide it over, and that dielectric grease is going to help prevent some of the moisture and corrosion from building up on our connectors. And if you need some, you can pick some up on our website using part number 11755. Now I'm going to take a little bit of electrical tape and I'm going to wrap my loom as well as the dust cover with some electrical tape to help prevent any kind of moisture or debris from getting inside. And it'll also help hide the color of the wires in case that loom starts to move. Now our base plate already has a spot to mount this right here. These two tabs are coming out. So I'm going to take a couple self-tapping screws and put them in place right here. I'm going to go ahead and plug in the cord that comes with our kit. Then I'm going to plug the other end into a tester so we can make sure our lights are working properly. So if I turn on the tail lights, we can see that those are working. Now if I turn on the left turn signal and the left brake light, we can see that's working properly. Now on the right side, we can see that's working as well. So now we know that our Lincoln is going to accept the lights from our RV. Now just to make sure that our Lincoln's going to have regular lights when we're driving it normally, I'll go ahead and show you that our factory lights still do work. If we turn on the headlights, we can see the tail lights still work, as well as the left turn signal, right turn signal, and the brakes in both turn signals. And with everything working properly, we're ready to hit the road. Now that everything's in place, I do want to mention, if you are going to be using a supplemental braking system, you may be required to pick up a brake light relay, which are sold separately, and you can pick them up on our website using part number RM88400. And then I'll finish up our look at the Roadmaster Diode 7-wire to 6-wire Flexo-Coil wiring kit, part number RM-15267 on our 2017 Lincoln MKX.